And it looks like we're live. Let me check.
I got live on my end.
All right, cool. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome to the live spoiler discussion of the Suicide Squad. And joining me is Al Seward. How you doing, Al?
I am good, man. I am good. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing good, man. I'm a little tired. Been working hard today, but I've been amped up to sit and talk about this movie. We were tossing around the idea of doing a live watch party, but
Right.
I think a spoiler discussion would be good. Maybe we'll do a live watch party later down the road. But before we get started, I'm very excited to discuss this movie with Al, and Matthew should be here at some point in time as well. But before we do that, I'm going to start our intro, and we will start the discussion in.
We're all gonna die.
I hope so.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Nice.
All right, so I am very curious to talk about this movie with you because I know you're a little
Yeah.
divided in your opinion.
Yeah.
Let's just kick off with that. Let me know your overall thoughts about the Suicide Squad.
So I thought it was average at best. I do think it's interesting that a lot of people really raved about it. I heard stuff like the best DCEU movie ever, and literally my face was like, because it wasn't that. So
I'll agree with that. It's not the best DCEU movie for sure.
yeah, I thought it was average at best. I mean, I guess we can get into more details about it a little bit later, but I was not blown away. And I will say at one point, honestly, Stevie, I actually fell asleep.
What?
Yep.
Oh man.
Yeah.
See, I'm on the other end here, man. Like I'm in that crowd that doesn't make sense to you. Like I don't think it's the best DCEU movie, but I absolutely loved this movie. I thought it gave me everything that I expected, from this Suicide Squad. Because like my expectations is just like a fun popcorn film, and that's what they gave me in this movie. And that's it. I don't really have any issues with the slower parts. Now there are some issues that I have with like character development and things like this, but honestly, it can all be swept under the rug just because I've had so much fun with this film.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted it to be that, and I was really excited about seeing it. I mean, like I interrupted my day. You can see I'm packing behind me. I was like, everything gets dropped. I'm going to see Suicide Squad. I told my wife I'll be back. I'm going to see Suicide Squad.
Well, did you watch it in theaters?
I did. Absolutely.
nice.
That's what I mean, man. Like I dropped everything. The whole day was supposed to be a day for moving, right? And then I was just like, but these 2 hours. And then when I got there, I was disappointed on a number of different levels, man. I didn't think the story was that compelling. I didn't think the villain was that compelling, and I do think that there were a lot of missed opportunities with some of the characters and character developments in the movie.
I'll agree with that. And before we dive into that, hello, Seth Draven. Tell us what you thought about this movie in the comments below. By the way, for anybody who doesn't know, Seth Draven is my kid. He's my boy.
Hey, Seth.
Yeah, there are definitely some issues with this film, especially with character development. Who was the villain exactly? The thinker was there. He didn't do anything. He could have just been, copy and paste random scientist one.
Right.
Like he didn't live up to the thinker name. Like I kept waiting for the thinker to outthink the Suicide Squad, to be like, aha, you actually fell into my plan, you stupid. You silly.
Think the Suicide Squad. Be like, you actually fell into my plan.
Is that me or you?
That's me. Hold on. I don't know what's going on. Give me a second. What did I do? That's me. Hold on. I don't know what. Okay. Sorry about
that. We were watching ourselves. It's a great. No, but like I kept waiting for the thinker to outthink the Suicide Squad, and it never happened. He just kind of went with their plan and then died. And then you have Amanda Waller. She's kind of the villain. She's the antagonist, getting the Suicide Squad out there. And I guess, but she wasn't like the main problem of the movie when it comes to like, trying to stop the evil thing from happening. So how do you take that? Who do you consider the main villain to be?
That's the thing, man. Like, I don't even know who the main villain was. And that's one of the problems I had in my own review. I talked about the story build is not very good here because I don't really know who the villain was. At first, I agree. You thought it was going to be the Thinker, and I thought the Suicide Squad was going to kind of had to really match wits with him. But then they got rid of him, and then you had this kind of the main villain to me was almost like anomalous to me. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't. It was this interdimensional being that was really hard to connect with as a villain. So I don't know who the villain was, and I don't really consider Amanda the villain because she normally plays the character that we saw in the movies is a reflection of her character in the comics. From what I know, I'm not a huge Suicide Squad reader, so I don't really know too much about the comics. But from what I know, there's not that much difference with what we saw in the movie and her character in the comics. But yeah, it didn't really have a big bad. You just kind of you got rid of who we thought it might have been, and then we had a third act with this big star monster, is the way I'll put it, just kind of destroying stuff. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, but if he wasn't just so damn fun to look at, like it's seriously like at one point in time, I'm sitting there watching, the starfish thing do its starfish thing, and like I'm just like, this is so ridiculous. I kind of like it for that, like it's just one of those things that just added to, like, yes, this is not a villain. This is obviously just a sit back and enjoy the show moment. But again, that's what I expected going into this movie, just a sit back and enjoy the fun and flashing, concept of it, which brings me like, this is James Gunn's version of the Suicide Squad. It's, a sequel, if you will. But it's definitely tonally different from David Ayer's. So, in my opinion, David Ayer, and I know there's this release the Ayer cut out there, which I'm not too confident that would make much of a difference. But as much as
I don't see, unless it was a totally different movie, I don't really see how.
Right, because with that movie, it was a little bit of fun a couple of times, but then it just kind of washed away.
Right.
But I did like that darker tone that he was going for, that kind of gritty, fit into the DCEU Snyderverse sort of thing. But then James Gunn kind of gives this the Guardians of the Galaxy treatment, and I think it worked. I think it worked for what conceptually the Suicide Squad is in cinema.
I mean, I agree with that to an extent. I do think that there were some parts of it that did work. I do like the tone that he wraps around this, so I agree with that. And I do kind of like the playfulness of how he dealt with the story in the Suicide Squad, because they're kind of a joke, right? Nobody really takes them seriously, and he directed it kind of in that fashion. But at the same time, it was a movie of consequence in terms of the death count and all of that. So, but there were some parts of it that I thought were kind of almost too playful with how he directed it. I didn't think it really worked. Like sometimes when we got some of the transitional scenes where it would spell out, or where it would kind of spell out or transition us to the next scene, like we're going to save Harley Quinn, and
3 minutes earlier,
right.
And now it kind of does give you this moment of suspension of disbelief, like. But again, that's one of the things that I do like in this thing. Like I like those transitions and adding the natural elements of letting us know where we're at in the story. Especially when you're jumping around. Like if you think about that that last Harley Quinn movie that came out, the Birds of Prey. That movie jumped around so much without telling the audience where they were that I have no clue what happened in that movie. Like I was just so lost throughout, the entire Birds of Prey movie. Like it sucked. I did not enjoy it at all.
But this kind of like Birds of Prey. It wasn't terrible to me, but
well, my son Seth loves Birds of Prey, and I just couldn't get behind it. But to me, when it comes to the Suicide Squad and James Gunn taking these little artistic, creative things, I like those little things. I like those little artistic thumbprints. When the director can just kind of do what he wants and makes things his own. But how does that translate into this disjointed DCEU that we have now? It seems like it's so tonally up and down, but technically all these movies are still in the same universe.
Well,
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
Well, no, I was gonna say, yeah. I mean, that's the thing. So it's all part of the DC EU. But honestly, because the DC EU has been so turned around in terms of like what it looks like from movie to movie, I don't think that what we see in the Suicide Squad is going to have a hard time fitting in to the DC EU, if that makes any sense. Because there's not a lot going on in that movie to me that has continuity with the DCEU, except for maybe a Waller statement about putting Superman in the ICU with a kryptonite bullet. But I don't think it really matters either, because I think that whatever the DCEU does now going forward, if Rudy was here, he'd probably have a fit that I was saying this. But
yeah, I tried to invite him, but I don't think Tuesdays are a good day for him because he's turned down every Tuesday that I've asked him.
Yeah, I've asked him for a couple of things too. I think he seems pretty busy in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it doesn't seem to have any continuity with the DCEU. I'm not even sure that it was really trying to. I guess the greater question I would have is what continuity are we talking about with the DCEU?
Right. That's a very good question. Because you have the Snyderverse, with the Zack Snyder's Justice League. Well, does that exist in this world? That's a tough question. In my head, in this mind, Snyderverse, it's all there. The Joss Whedon version is just like I just put that in the trash and I lit it on fire and put it outside. Like it doesn't really exist in my head. But yeah, there's not really. They just put a couple of lines in here and there saying, oh well, he put Superman in the ICU with the kryptonite bullet. Oh, okay, well, Superman exists in this world. We just assume that's Henry Cavill, especially if you look at the first Suicide Squad where they brought Ben Affleck into that, as a cameo. So yeah, it's but they're very, very dangerously close to coming into this mixed up world of the Fox X-Men continuity issues. Like they can. I feel like they're trying really hard not to do that, but they're so close to doing that.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I'm not even sure if it'd be interesting to see if Gunn has mentioned this, but I'm not even sure if he was trying to make something that fit into the DCEU framework. I mean, obviously this is a DCEU film, but I'm not sure that he was trying to do that. I don't know that he wasn't just trying to make a fun Suicide Squad movie. I don't know. I feel like because there probably doesn't appear to be this grand plan for the DCEU, that it's possible that Gunn didn't do something like that. Whereas with Guardians of the Galaxy, he already kind of had an idea conceptually of how this would fit into the larger Marvel universe. So he was able to work within, all those parameters. So,
yeah, but to be honest with you, I know we kind of disagree on our feelings with this movie, but I think they could really move forward with this tone that James Gunn has helped set up, because obviously they're still wanting to stick to the darker route of things. This is a rated R movie, like pretty rated R, but it's not as dark and depressing as Zack Snyder was leading his world to be, and which is disappointing for me as a huge fan of the Snyder films. But at the same time, I get what direction Warner Brothers is trying to go with having James Gunn give it the Guardians of the Galaxy treatment.
Hold on 1 second. I'm sorry. Hey, I'm literally in the middle of a live stream. You are on it right now. So,
hello.
Okay. Okay. All right. Bye. Sorry, everybody. That was my wife. When your wife calls, you got to answer the phone.
I don't blame you, man. I don't blame you.
Really?
Was she calling back?
Hello. Hello. All right. I think that was a mistake.
The little butt dial. All right.
Yeah.
But basically what I'm saying is I feel like this is a smart move on Warner Brothers to bring in James Gunn. I think this is what they were trying to do with bringing in Joss Whedon. Um, to redo Justice League, but it didn't work because they literally took somebody else's material, chopped it all up, and put out this very disjointed movie.
Right.
This was somebody's own creative decision with the tone that I think Warner Brothers is trying to get to.
Well, one thing I will say, and I do agree with you with this, one thing that I do think that Gunn does that's really good here is that this movie does have a darker tone. It might not be as dark as Snyder's work, but it's definitely a darker tone movie.
Yeah.
But it also adds a nice comedic element, which I do think if the DCEU were to pick that up, would translate well, because I think that in some cases with some of the other DCEU movies, you've tried to have areas or pockets of comic relief. I feel like the Flash's character tries to do that, but it doesn't do it as well as this movie did with the Suicide Squad. There were some scenes in here that was hilarious, like when
Matthew Haynes just showed up. Let me get him in here real quick.
All right, let's get Matthew in.
What up?
We see you, bro.
You can't catch me eating. Oh my God. Hi.
Hey, buddy.
You're not sharing, I guess.
Man, it's been crazy. I was running all over the place. I'm glad to be here.
You see me, you see behind me, I'm where you were a couple of weeks ago.
Yes, sir.
Did you get your air conditioner?
Yeah, it's right back there. You can see it on the floor, right
Nice.
by Wonder Woman, right over there.
Nice. Well, welcome to the club, Matthew. We're just kind of going over our overall thoughts, James Gunn's comparison to David Ayer and the kind of different direction he went, and how this movie fits into the DCEU at all. So that's just kind of where we're at right now. So I guess we could just kind of give you a little chance to let us know what your thoughts of this movie was.
Okay. First of all, does my mic sound okay? Does my voice sound a little lower than it should be?
No, you sound good.
Nice. Sound good.
Yeah, I was on the stream yesterday, and the whole time the voice was like deep, and no one told me anything.
Oh yeah, I hate that StreamYard doesn't let you hear yourself.
Yeah,
you know, at least that's what I use. I hate that they don't let you hear yourself so you can adjust. But yeah, what are your thoughts on this movie, man?
So I've seen the movie 2 times now, and I'm planning to see that for a third. Honestly, man, like I loved it. I just loved it, and I'm pretty sure we get more into it later. But the reason I really loved it was just because it just did exactly what I thought it was going to do and what I wanted it to do for this type of film. And I'm not looking for any Oscar nominations for this movie, even though I think there are some for certain things, like, you know, cinematography wise, I think.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
But I mean, I can get deeper into it later. But
well, you and I are on the same page. You know, Al thinks this is just your run of the mill basic movie, and he had pretty compelling reasons for that. But again, like you, it's a good popcorn movie. Like I've seen this movie 4 times because I genuinely enjoy watching it. Like 4 times, on and off. I'll turn it on while I'm making dinner or something like this. But it's so much fun. I've had fun with it every single time.
I mean, I saw it twice too. Sorry, Matthew. There's no way in the world this thing's getting an Oscar for anything.
You don't think anything? You don't think anything in the cinematography deserves an Oscar? Come on, man. Some of the choreo shots and some of those carrying shots, I think were
so
Harley in that. Are we doing spoilers in this one, Stevie?
Oh yeah, this is full spoiler.
So that hallway scene with Harley, I think that was the strongest moment of the film, action-wise, choreography-wise, and camera-wise, and VFX.
And you're talking, so that's a good point that Matthew's bringing up, because this is one of the things I was saying a little bit earlier on. Some of those elements, for me, Matthew, I actually didn't like in this. I didn't like that. I didn't like that cinematic touch. Now, I can see how you might, like, I definitely, when you talk about like the artistic value of it, when Harley's walking and then the flowers are going behind her and all that kind of stuff, like visually, I think it works. I think it's nice, but I did not like that element as part of this movie, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, well, see, I'm on the other side of that fence, just simply because I love those suspension of disbelief moments, those moments where you have to you take yourself out of, okay, I'm watching this real situation, and put yourself into, I'm watching this situation and kind of what's going on in Harley's head at the same time. And that's what I really enjoyed about that scene specifically, and a few others. Another really great scene that I just absolutely adore is when King Shark, is playing with those jellyfish, in that aquarium, like that.
Yeah.
That is like, he's part of the heart of this film. And I guess let's jump into the characters here. Now, Seth Draven made a comment, says, I have a theory that TDK is still alive. Okay, Seth, well, we saw him dead, but what's your theory? Let us know, and we'll go from there. But now we just talked about Harley Quinn. Out of the 2 other movies I've seen with Harley Quinn, this is the first one that I'm like, okay, this is Harley Quinn. I didn't think she was terrible in the first Suicide Squad movie, but her accent was in and out. It wasn't quite there. As I said to Al earlier, I'm not a huge fan of Birds of Prey. I just thought that movie was just all over the place. Thus, I just kind of didn't pay that much attention. But Margot Robbie knocked it out of the park with this character. Okay, this is Harley Quinn. This is the Harley Quinn that, that it mirrors what we see in the comics. It mirrors what we see in the cartoons, and it adds her own flair to it. What do you guys think?
I mean, I think she was great. And in terms of her role as Harley Quinn, I think she was good. I liked her in Birds of Prey also, and I liked her in Suicide Squad 1. So I think Margot Robbie is great in this role. I definitely will concede that. She's really good as Harley Quinn.
One of those roles where, like, when you look at Christopher Reeve, you're like, okay, that's Superman. Or you look at certain characters and like, hey, that's, who it is. Or you look at RDJ, that's Iron Man, so on and so forth.
Right.
Margot Robbie is like that for me, for Harley. Like, when I see her now, that's all I can see is Harley. And obviously, I've seen some of her other things, and she's great in those as well. But when it comes to Harley, I feel like she puts a certain amount of, extra effort and passion into that character. Even so much to the point where she is, she's hounding WB to get a Sirens thing going on, to get Poison Ivy in and to get some of the other people in. She's actually into the character and wants to do more with this character. So and unfortunately, I heard David Ayer explain like his side of things with the movie. We know that's not his film. He had a lot of plans for Harley, and a lot of plans, deep backstory that he wanted Margot to do. So when it comes to like all 3 of those films, this I think was definitely her best, as you said, Stevie, best version of Harley I've seen from all 3 of those movies. Definitely
the most honed, and that's what I liked about it. Like you could tell that because she cares about the character so much, she has honed, the accent, her personality, her quirks. She's really just made it. Now I think this is like the Harley we're going to get going into the future.
I would agree with that. I do feel like she's gotten better with the character. Each time you see her, like, she progresses. She gets better and better and better. And it might be exactly because of what Matthew said. Like, she really resonates with the character. Like, the scene where she's being tortured and the guy turns his back and she just kind of looks up at him. I'm like, that's Harley, right?
Yeah.
And you're about to get it too. Mm-hmm. And I like the fact, to me, I heard some people complaining about this, but I disagree with it. How I do think she does a really good job of showing the complexity of Harley's character, because we know that Harley is, or at least in my opinion, Harley's semi-nuts, but Harley is very smart. Yeah. And people were talking about her not being as smart, kind of being dissy. That's because she's nuts. But that is a very smart woman. I mean, we know what she did. We know how she came on the scene with helping the Joker. So she's no moron. So
yeah, she's very criminally smart for sure. Right. You know, like if there's an escape plan or an out or just guns ablazing, she's gonna, outwit anybody in that situation.
Yep.
So Margot Robbie, home run. I think we all kind of agree on that part.
Yeah.
Idris Elba, Bloodsport.
Bloodsport. Love them.
Bloodsport. Yes.
Bloodsport. Loved him.
Yeah, he was good.
He was great, man. I think I didn't really watch too much of the promos except for like the one main trailer that they released after DC Fandom. And I didn't really think he was going to be like a center of this entire movie. Actually, I didn't really look too much of the press stuff or the interviews. So for me going into this, I'm like, okay, Bloodsport's actually like a main character. Like he's the main character leading this entire operation.
Yeah.
And that was a twist for me, just because I'm pretty sure it might have been revealed, prior to this, but for me, just seeing that and seeing his performance as Bloodsport, and just honestly like his unique abilities with those guns. Like he has weapons everywhere. He's like pulling weapons from the back of his head. Like I personally enjoy the crap out of that.
Almost questionably Tony Stark tech style weapons, which is something I was kind of shocked to see. I was like, are they going to explain where this tech came from?
Nanotech tech.
Like that. That's just like, okay. All right, I guess we're doing that. Al, what do you think of Bloodsport?
I think he was good in that too. I really do. I enjoyed his character. I thought his his touches of comedic relief were good. I thought his I'm not gonna, camaraderie is not the right word I want, but I guess the way that he and Peacemaker played off of each other was good in this as well. So it's funny because like I feel like there are these singular moments of the Suicide Squad that are really good, but I think holistically, story wise, this was not the best story, and I also don't think, I guess we'll get into this, it was the best villain. Like honestly, I think Enchantress is a much more interesting villain than the villain we get in the Suicide Squad 2. But I think had they used Enchantress, I think that Gunn would have had to written a different story in the third act. That just because it wouldn't have worked with the type of story that we have with the current villain. I was going to ask you, Matthew, because I don't know much about Suicide Squad on the comic book page, not much at all. So I don't know how interesting and I'm sorry, forgive me, Stevie, if I'm jumping the gun here.
Oh, you're fine, buddy.
I don't know how interesting the main, I guess, villain in this really is in the comic books. Is he a very interesting villain or not really? I don't know.
So I actually learned this not too long ago, and I did more research on it. So Starro, from what I've learned, was the very first like villain the Justice League faced.
Okay.
So he was like a Justice League level threat.
Okay.
So in the comic books, going throughout that, it was a pretty interesting character. Just because he's an alien, he's this weird looking being. And when it comes to just to kind of respond to Al, if that's okay, Steve.
Yeah, go ahead, guys.
I didn't want to go veer too much off of the notes, but like to me, when it comes to this villain, again, I guess it all comes down to perspective, but going into this, I just wanted wacky and nonsensical and just randomness and just craziness, because if you read any good amount of Suicide Squad comic books, that's what you get.
Okay.
And not having this grand scheming villain that we're used to, or this villain with a higher purpose. Starro was I think the whole purpose of it was just to show who the real villain was. And I don't even think it was Starro. The real villain was actually the people that they were working for. So, they kidnapped this interdimensional being from his home. And you actually remember him saying, I was having fun just watching the stars. He was chilling. Right.
Yeah.
And they took him in.
That was a great final line, too.
It was. And they just took him in and experimented on him, sent him to Corto Maltese, and did all that stuff. So the villain, Starro, actually, in my opinion, was a victim.
Yeah. Well, Al and I were trying to figure out earlier who was the villain of this movie. Before you joined in, we're like, Starro, he was obviously the main boss battle, but the Thinker wasn't really a villain. And according to the movie, Amanda Waller and like the Americans are the villain in this movie, because they're wanting to shut this whole thing down so they don't get caught for being involved with it. I
think humanity is the villain here.
Yeah,
because
that makes sense.
Of our curious nature as human beings, and our need to explore and conquer and take what's not ours, what isn't ours, and things like that. So I feel like you can find some pretty cool, deep messages between that. Obviously, the main villain on paper is supposed to be Starro, but just thinking about it back, it makes you think, like, man, like, they did all this, and they got these people who were most likely going to die, so they can't say anything, but the mission will be finished, to go and just erase their mistakes. And it gets really deep to the point, you know, like, man, we're messed up. Like we're messed up people, and we gotta work on how we treat each other and how we treat things that we don't understand.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, because I can see that point. And if that is the case, and I don't know that it is, but if it is the case that Gunn was kind of trying to give that message, then he wrapped it in a brilliant package, because it doesn't come across as that serious. But you do make a good point, Matthew, and just some of those observations there. Even the Suicide Squad themselves, like Waller's like, you guys are cannon fodder. I'm going to use you to get a mission done. If you die, you die. There's a whole nother set of you in the jail that we'll replace you with.
Oh yeah, they proved that right at the beginning of the movie when that first team gets massacred, and then in comes the second team. Like she knew, yeah, they're just.
She said the first team they were that's what they were. They were dummies. They were.
Yeah. That was infantry. Yeah.
Yep, dead men walking is what
a distraction. They're just a distraction. She said.
Pretty much.
Which I will say is an interesting thing, because one of the things that I do think is there's a big missed opportunity here. And again, I don't really know how much we know about this character in the comics, but even if we don't know it enough or a lot, I wish that Gunn would have written more into is it Weasel? Is it
Weasel? Weasel.
Yeah, like his. I mean, every time I saw him on screen, I was like, man, I either want to know more about him, or I wanted to see him in action. So when he jumps out and he drowns, I almost wonder if there was a rewrite there. Does anyone know if something happened with that character?
Remember, he wasn't there. I think at the very end or a post-credit scene, Weasel was still alive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. At number one, I liked Weasel just where he was at. He was such an odd character. I loved that they made me want more of him and didn't give it to me. Like they hinted at more can come. But here's your little peek into this world. He was such a disgusting little creature that, I'm just like,
he killed 27 children.
Right. I love that. I love that explanation from Rick Flag. He's like, he killed 27 people, and he agreed to. Well, he's just here. So,
yeah.
Jim,
and no one checked if he can swim.
Jimbo says here, Idris Elba. Side note: I literally just saw he's voicing Knuckles in the next Sonic movie. I read that today too.
Okay.
So, but kind of going back on the Idris Elba real quick, I wanted to give my quick thoughts on it because neither of you guys' opinions seem to touch on it, and maybe because, like Matthew said, he didn't really pay attention to any of the stuff, much of the promotion leading up to this, but I was very aware that they tried to get Will Smith back. He couldn't do it. And with that in my head, when I watched this movie, more specifically the first part of this movie, I'm like, okay, this was written for Deadshot. This was written for this character, so he couldn't do it, so they found a similar character that exists and kind of placed him in there. And throughout my first watch of this movie, I just kept thinking, what would this scene be like if Will Smith was in it? And like I almost wanted to see that. Maybe it's an unfair way for me to think, but it's just where my mind went. Now, I love Idris Elba's role in this film. I think he did a great job. I loved, his comedic tone, the way he interacted with the other characters. Like he did really good, but it made me think, what would it have been like if this was Deadshot, and would it have seemed more like a Suicide Squad family, and like thus making Rick Flag's death a little bit more impactful. Yeah. But that's just my quick going back on the Idris Elba thing. I just wanted to get that out there real quick, that I had that cloud in my head when I was watching it for the first time.
That's a tough question too, because I don't even know. I almost think that Will Smith probably would have done as well, because I can see Will Smith pulling off the comedic element of it. Because sometimes you look at stuff like that and you think, oh well, if they replace this actor with that actor, it'll probably be great. But I don't know how well they would handle this part of it. But I feel like Will Smith probably would have handled all of that very well.
Well, yeah, just fine. But also, would it be noteworthy to actually have Idris Elba just kind of replace as Deadshot, just to keep that same character in there, because that was one of the rumors going around, is that was what was going to happen when Will Smith couldn't do it, and then they signed up Idris. You know, like it was one of those things like, are they replacing Will? But you know, they decided to not go that route. You know, keep Will in that back pocket, if you will. So
I'm glad they did that too. Go ahead, Matthew.
No, I'm listening to you guys. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm glad they did that too, because for two reasons. Number one, it gives Idris a place in the DCEU if they want to use him again. But at the same time, you could also bring in Will too. You could have them both there. So, but
yeah.
I also like the fact that I feel like it kind of respects Idris in the sense that it gives him his own character. He didn't assume a character that, you know. So
yeah, and I think all in all, it's good too. It's hard for me to let that go sometimes, especially like even in my last watch. You know, I was like, man, I wonder what this scene would have been like if that was Will Smith. You know, and you connect him to the first movie, and again, like I said, creating this, you know, suicide family, if you will. You know, but I mean, all in all, he did good. I do want an explanation on that suit, that tech. Where's that tech been all this time? But speaking of the Suicide Squad family, I want to move this. Real quick. Jimbo says maybe since he's alive, he's talking about Weasel in the post-credit scene, he'll be in the Peacemaker series. That is very
amazing.
Very, that would be absolutely great, Jim.
I hope so. I definitely want to see some more. I want to see him in a fight. I want to see him in like in a combat situation.
Oh yeah, he would be a madman. I feel like.
I think he would.
like the Tasmanian devil, like just right there.
It'd be crazy, man.
Joe Kinnaman, I believe that's how you say his last name, is Rick Flag.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to start off with this one. Rick Flag, I did not like in the first movie. Just like physically, the dude looked sickly. Like he didn't look healthy in the movie. Like when you go back and watch it again, like he looks like he's like has the flu or something during the whole thing. And I just wasn't impressed with him. In this movie, from the very first shot that he was in, boom, like he looked good, he looked healthy, and his acting was more prominent. Like I just think he shined way better in this movie than he did in David Ayer's version of the character.
I didn't even remember he was in the last movie until after I watched this movie. And I was like, oh shoot. I'm like, oh yeah, that's the guy. Oh yeah, oh him. Yeah. And
yeah, so
that movie was just like ever since, I don't know if did you guys touch on it about Ayer's explanation about his whole message, his whole reply to that one reporter?
No, we kind of just glossed over the whole. We lightly mentioned it, but please let us know what was his statement.
Oh no, I mean it was a lot in that, and that could be a whole stream in itself. But the main thing that he was getting to was that there was a lot of interference in that film from the studio, which we all know, and that only a handful of people have actually seen his cut of the film. And I think they actually forced him to rewrite a script in like 3 weeks or something like that. So it was ridiculous. So a lot of that played to the forgettableness of the film and a lot of the issues that movie had. So, and I mean, to be fair though, I only did watch Suicide Squad once. I only watched it once. I've never watched it again ever since because I refused to, because I remember being so mad the very first time I saw it. And I was like, nah, there's no way they could release that. And then I just never watched it again. But it was forgettable, man.
Yeah, it was forgettable. And studio involvement, which was very heavy-handed with Warner Brothers at the time, it definitely affected that movie a lot. And I don't know if we'll ever see the Ayer cut. I'm not sure how much better it will be if we see the Ayer cut. Because, again, even though it's going to be a cut, it's not going to be what he originally written for the film. He originally, he had the parademons in there. He was going to have the Boom Tube show up, and Enchantress was going to be a much bigger role than she was, instead of just that dancing thing that she did in that movie. I don't even know what that was. It's scary. But, David Ayer's situation is unfortunate, but I'm not too confident that an actual cut will save that movie. I don't know. I haven't seen it. So,
I mean, it's like Zack Snyder's Justice League too. I mean, love or hate it, Zack Snyder's Justice League was 10 times, like a far better improvement than the theatrical cut, in my personal opinion.
Yeah,
But, I mean,
I agree with you
will,
100%.
I will say though, the theatrical cut, Whedon's cut was not as bad as Suicide Squad 1, though.
It wasn't. No.
So, and that's the thing. What I was telling Stevie Matthew is that if Ayer's cut is going to be anything notable, it's got to be not just a little different, a lot different than what we saw from one. There were a whole lot of problems with that movie. I think cinematically it wasn't. It was actually pretty cool, some of the stuff they did in there. But there was, with the writing, with the characters, with the plot, there were just so many different problems. And then the biggest problem I had was Enchantress. And I remember doing a review from that back in the day and saying, man, she was underwritten because she's a beast. But the way that they did her in that movie, I'm like, what is going on here? We got Gumby, who was just waving her arms, and then I was just,
Yeah, that movie, that like Matthew said, we can go on all day and have our own stream about this.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe that entire theatrical cut was all reshoots as well. If I'm not mistaken.
Well, I don't think all of it, but I would definitely agree that a majority of it was. I mean, just look at how Joker was so disjointed from that movie. He didn't fit in, and I've always argued that that's because the version of him that fit in is on the cutting room floor. They shot all of his stuff with a certain tone in mind. Then Warner Brothers steps in and says, and then they had to readjust things and cut most of his stuff out. And then you got this weird thing that doesn't fit in this movie. I still have faith in Jared Leto's Joker, a little faith, but maybe we can see that come to fruition. Maybe he can get the Harley Quinn treatment where, the third time's a charm for me, and then we get to see him actually guns a-blazing. And all right, this Joker has now earned a staple in the DCEU.
He was great in Blade Runner 2049, so I have no issue with him as an actor. I think.
Oh no, not one bit.
Great.
I really like Jared Leto too. So,
all right,
his Zack Snyder stuff is pretty good from what we saw, but
yeah. He had a little laugh in there that still makes me cringe. That I don't know. It was. I can tell that I can tell in Jared Leto's performance that they shot him separately from everything. He was supposed to be there conversing with the other actors. I'm kind of aware that he's not there. Does that make sense? Do you guys know what I'm talking about? So, all right.
He was actually the best performance in, I can't remember that Denzel's latest movie.
Isn't it the one with the guy from iRobot from Rami Malek?
Yeah. But Jared Leto as the villain was, to me, the best thing in that movie. He was the best performance in that movie, which is big because most of the time, whatever, if Denzel's in something, he's definitely stealing the show. But Leto was the best thing in that movie to me.
Well, and Leto seems to be putting on a great performance in this new Gucci movie that I saw a trailer for. If they wouldn't have told me that was Leto, I wouldn't have known.
Yeah,
the makeup on that.
Yeah. So bringing things back to Suicide Squad, I'm wanting to go down this list of actors, and I'm very curious to see your guys' thoughts on John Cena as Peacemaker.
Man, that's a WWE fan growing up. So for me, it was post WWF because I was born around that transition, and then into WWE. And I remember seeing John Cena. And this man, from all the little commercials to WWE films he's done and just little things he's done over the years, I think this is his personal, his best performance I've ever seen him in from all of his other movies that he's done. Whether it was a stupid little comedy film or something, this was the best one I've seen him in. And I have extremely high hopes for him as an actor. I think he can really make be on a level as, I guess, having roles like The Rock later on.
Yeah. I kind of compared his performance in this movie with Dave Bautista in the Army of the Dead, where, okay, now this is the performance where I'm like, okay, now I'm starting to appreciate you as an actor, not just that copy and paste bodybuilder trying to make, or not bodybuilder, wrestler trying to make it into the cinematic world. Mm-hmm. This movie, he had me hook, line, and sinker for almost every line he said. I believed it. He said it with authority. Some of the things he said were just outrageously funny, and you could tell that, like,
the whitey tighties.
yeah, well, dude, it's ridiculous. If this whole island had, was full of dicks, and I was supposed to eat all those dicks, for the sake of patriotism, I would. Like, that shows his integrity. Like, he will do what he has to do, for what he thinks is the greater good.
Even the whole women and children thing too.
Oh my goodness, yeah, every man, woman, child, yeah, but he sells that role so good. And now, like, you tell me before that they're gonna do a Peacemaker's TV series, I would have been like, no thanks. Now I'm excited for the Peacemaker TV series.
I was one of those guys that said, I don't know if I want it. And then now here we are.
Well, and I hear that James Gunn is supposed to direct like 5 out of the 6 or 8 episodes, how many they have.
Something
so
like that, yeah.
I'm excited for that one.
I thought he was good too in the role, and I was impressed because when I saw it, I was like, "Oh man, they got they got him. They got even though he died in the first 5 minutes. What's his name from SNL?
Pete Davidson.
Yeah, Pete Davidson. So when I looked at some of the cast members, I was like, "Sweet mercy." The only faith now I have is that Gunn is directing this, because outside of Elba and some of the other folks, I was like, nope. But he was actually really good at it, and I thought that as an actor he was good too. Because like you, Stevie, I'm like, oh, here we go, another ring guy that's jumped into Hollywood trying to make it. But I was impressed. I thought that he definitely had some funny moments. I know when they invaded the camp and they're kind of going back and forth with Joe Calvin, and he walks to the guy that's already on the mat. He's just like,
yes. Just to make sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's fun moments like that. The confidence he shows in the role, but also the vulnerability or that he kind of hints at in certain, like when he kills, Rick Flag.
Yep.
Like you can see on his face, he did not want to do that. He kept telling him, "Don't make me do this."
Right.
And in this moment where you think, oh no, he's thinking, what did I do? It's not like that. Then Ratcatcher 2 grabs the disc and he's like, put that down. Like he's right back at it. And he just swallows that stuff. It'd be very interesting to see how this character grows. I wonder if this series is going to be a prequel or a sequel. So like I
believe it'll be a sequel based on what we saw at the end of the film.
Yeah, I hope so.
On the bed.
I hope it is, because he's definitely somebody I would like to see grow, almost like in that Loki sort of way. You get to see him kind of evolve from the killer that he is.
I think the fascinating thing about him playing Peacemaker, even though we've seen him in other movies, I think that will be the test of his mantle, because he will be carrying the show.
Yes.
He won't be alongside in Elba or whatever, whoever else. He will be the lead, so that will really kind of show what he's made of as an actor.
Yeah, at least it wasn't like LeBron James' Space Jam. Even though that one wasn't as bad, it was okay.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen it. I've never seen the first Space Jam, so
me neither. But the second one was hilarious, though. It was hilarious in a corny, cheesy, family fun. I'm watching this with the kids kind of vibe.
I saw your review about that, Matthew, and I think one of the things you said is, I don't know why people are acting like so crazy over a family film.
Yeah, it's just a little family fun movie. Don't look too much into it.
Yeah. Viola Davis as Amanda Waller. I don't know if there's really too much to get into about her. She did the same thing that she did in Suicide Squad. I think it's well casted. She did her part, and she
plays it just like her comic book character counterpart.
Yeah,
Amanda Waller.
I've read that a lot.
Oh man, Amanda Waller in the comic books is an ultimate savage.
Yeah,
ultimate savage. If she had a child, she would kill her own child just to protect America. Like, she's crazy. So,
I mean, one of the things that I do like about Amanda's character, in which I hope that we can see her in the DCEU, is I feel like she's not a villain, but in her tone, she is one of the most formidable people that we've seen so far in the DCEU. No superpowers, no but just like she's a cold beast. I mean, and Viola Davis just plays that role so well. I like her in so many different things, but man, I mean, just her affect and some of the looks that she would give people, and just her commitment to get it done. I mean, she no feelings, no sentiment. Like, this is what we're doing. That's it.
Even threatening blood sports, child.
Yeah,
she was not playing.
Nope.
I didn't expect. I expected, but I didn't expect at the same time for her team to turn on her. I saw it, but I didn't see it at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I was a little bit surprised by that, but at the same time, I wasn't. But just because she's so fearless, even when Bloodsport comes at her, and she's just like, stand down, like she's a beast. She's a G, man.
Yeah, she is.
Yeah, I'm very curious what's going to happen to that employee that knocked her out.
I don't even think I don't think anything's going to happen to her. I think she would just. She almost strikes me as, depending. I guess I can see both things. I can see her retaliating, or she almost strikes me as someone that's like, it happened, I'm back on mission. Not even gonna, So
I don't know. I feel like you can't be crossing Amanda Waller that way. You can't do it. Like there's going to be
some repercussions.
Yeah, repercussions for this.
I mean, you did see that look that she gave them after she got off the phone with Bloodsport.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I'm about to get you.
Yeah.
Looks like I'm getting a new team, everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, right?
Sylvester Stallone, King Shark. Now, this is a voice acting presence. When I heard it, I thought, okay, it's kind of like a low-hanging fruit casting. For that, obviously, Sylvester Stallone was in Guardians of the Galaxy, and so him and James Gunn have some sort of relationship. But when King Shark first shows up, and I hear Sylvester Stallone, I'm thinking, okay, I just hear Sylvester Stallone. But then like it sounds like Sylvester Stallone trying to sound like a caveman. But didn't take too long. I think it was like the very next scene that we saw King Shark. I just like completely forgot all that. This character was his own existing thing, and I ended up loving everything about King Shark. And just how much his character progressed in this movie alone. From this vicious killer, he almost turns into the Hulk. I mean, he's the Hulk presence in this movie. Yeah. If you compare it to the MCU, I think there's even one scene where he's walking up the stairs. And I keep hearing in my head, I hate stairs, from the MCU. But what do you guys think about Sylvester Stallone playing King Shark? Do you think that worked for you, or did it not?
I mean, I think he was really good at it. And it's interesting because a lot of people point to Ratcatcher 2 as kind of the emotional anchor to this film. But to me, King Shark provides a lot of emotional weight to this too. Just kind of like the innocence of his character, but at the same time being extremely powerful. Num. So, but I did enjoy his character, and I thought for me he was a big part of the emotional driver to the story, even more so than Ratcatcher 2, in my opinion.
Yeah, that as I said, going back to that scene where he's playing with the jellyfish, like that moment, it's magical. It's like it's childish in a good way, then they turn on him and start eating him. But
then also that look of that feeling of betrayal that he has when he falls down to the bottom after that, and that one single tear falls down from his eye. To me, that was just like he felt betrayal in that moment. He was like, I trusted these things. These are my friends. Right. They weren't nom-noms, and now they tried to kill me, and now I'm mad. And so it's that little single tear for me. But I think this is like my third, I think it's the third iteration I've seen of King Shark. King Shark was the Flash first for me. And then I saw the Harley Quinn series, which I think is my favorite of all of them, the Harley Quinn series. And then this one. So I think this, and all three entirely different versions of King Shark. By the way, all three.
I'm gonna have to look up some clips of him in the Flash. I'm very curious about it because
it's so different.
Yeah, I've never been a comic book fan, so I didn't even know King Shark was a thing until this movie. So, let's see here. Well, speaking of Ratcatcher 2, I want to go off with saying this. This is kind of down a rabbit hole. The lady that plays Ratcatcher 2, what's her name? Danelia McQuire, I think it's how you say it. She's putting off some Talia al Ghul vibes to me. I would love to see her play Talia al Ghul. Like when I see her, that's what I kept thinking the entire time. But other than
I
that,
can see that.
right? But I mean, obviously not in the DCEU. Oops. But yeah. But that character itself was such a innocent portrayal of what they kept going back to and saying, "Oh, millennials." They kept putting her in this box, and she kind of lived up to that. But then she would come all out and like save the planet at the end. I don't know. And the love story between her and her dad, I really like the character. I would like to see more from this character, but I don't know how much more we could dive into what she could do besides control rats. So
I think we can. I mean, but you can do a lot with them rats, as we saw. Like, for instance, they're a great scare tactic for those who have rat phobias. All right, that's a main thing. Another thing too, you saw them cutting the wires on the cameras. Like, you can get some serious, like, cool spy stuff with that. Some type of thievery going on. Them stealing because they used to bring trinkets to her, and then obviously the whole big thing. I mean, Ratcatcher in the comic books is also a very interesting villain. They've done some pretty cool stuff with Ratcatcher. So, I think with her character, they can really, if they wanted to, they can touch on some really deeper tones with her. More or less, 'cause like you said, very innocent and very like trusting and forgiving of people. What happens when, she trusts the wrong person? What happens when, she puts maybe too much faith in someone else? And then we start to see more of that evil come out in a way that it's very crazy. I don't know what the best example to give is. Someone who was good their whole life and does something bad. When they do something bad, it's really bad. It's like a complete 180.
I mean, like, I do agree, Matthew. I think what would be interesting with her story, I would watch this, is if you do take her position in Suicide Squad, which is a gentler position and really almost like a childlike position, but then you see her devolve or evolve, whichever one is appropriate, I'm not sure, to a character that's much more sinister. Like, that would be a fascinating story to watch, to see her go from what we see in the Suicide Squad to almost someone that's just like cutthroat. I would love, that'd be really interesting to see something.
I mean,
like
to add to that, sorry.
I was just gonna say they kind of give you a glimpse of that in the movie, Al, with King Shark, when he wouldn't do that. He has very kind eyes, and then her little rat friend, explains it to her, and then she turned it fully on. I could see that. It would almost be like a Wanda from the MCU type of deal.
Yeah, that's a good one too. I mean, like, to add to what you both are saying, she also doesn't have as much experience as a quote unquote villain. They straight up just threw her in there because of her abilities and what she did. And as you heard from the backstory, she literally only ended up there because she was trying to steal money to survive, because she had to survive, and that's all she knew. Her father used the rats to provide resources for them to survive. So she has a great heart, and she's not evil in nature. She's just someone that didn't have a lot for her and wanted to survive, and just somehow ended up with, she's guilty by association more or less than she is by herself. So what happens when she actually does become a villain and gain more experience, and trusting more people, more battles, more things? If they really wanted to, I have a hard time believing DC would ever do this, but if they wanted to, and they have the right people behind it, they can, like you said, Al, evolve or devolve into this really crazy type of Wanda, Maximoff situation where she's like, no, I'm owning this now. I'm tired of being used. I'm tired of being walked over. You're not going to just trust me because I'm some young girl. I'm going to do what I want when I want, and yada, yada. And it'd be crazy. And you can go crazy with them rats. I'm telling you.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I kind of
diseases too, plagues. You can bring the wrong rat in the wrong house.
I kind of slipped my mind when you brought it up, like when she used her rats as, like to kind of infiltrate the buildings and take out the camera. I was like, oh yeah, I kind of forgot about that for a second. You're right. They could actually do a lot with this. I kind of recant what I said. You definitely made a point.
Shut down cars and all types of automobiles.
Yeah, and no one would second guess it. No one would second guess it. Now there is a character in this movie that I'm just not a big fan of, and he's a small character. He gets killed right at the beginning, and that's Savant. I don't like Michael Rooker as Savant. I just don't. I just didn't get enough of it. Like I don't know. It just I kind of wish they just didn't do the Savant thing and at least put Michael Rooker in that role because I know he's doing a cameo, but I kind of expected a lot with him being in this in this movie. I thought a bigger presence, but I never really got to see what Savant does besides that little ball trick, which is very comparable to what Yondu does with the whistle thing. But I don't know. When every time I see Savant and I see Michael Rooker, I'm just like, nah, okay, thanks for giving him a paycheck, Gunn. So I don't know about Savant. What do you guys know about the character? Because
I don't know
he didn't
anything
impress me.
about him. Matthew might, but I don't.
I don't know too much. Savannah is in those list of characters that DC has that are like throwaway characters almost.
Well,
At least from what I've seen, just because I don't know if you have it listed, but TDK. Do you guys know where TDK was inspired from?
No.
So TDK is actually not a DC character. The actual DC character's name, and get this, is Arm Fall Off Boy.
I think I read that.
Yeah, I remember coming up on this revelation. I was reading the DC encyclopedia. That's like Arm Fall Off Boy. What the? And I read I went and looked up for some of his comic book appearances. This man ripped his arm off, and his main fighting style is to whack people with his arm like this, and then put it back in. So, like characters like TDK and Savant and stuff like that was to kind of, I guess, make fun sort of those really silly characters in the comic books. But I've heard some cool things about Savant, but honestly, I'm in the same boat. Don't know too much besides what I've seen already.
All right. Well, if he was just one of those throwaway characters, then they did a good job representing that. I was just sad to see that's the role Michael Rooker got. According to Seth, he doesn't believe that TDK is dead. He has a theory that he's still alive, but I don't know if I would really care to see him back. But all right,
it's not gonna do much but just whack people with his arms. That was literally that whole scene was dedicated to making fun of that character.
Yeah. I will say one of my first out loud laughs is when they're shooting his arms and he's wiggling on the ground, just screaming for mercy. Like,
and it's funny the way even the way they're like when they're getting hit by the arms, they're looking at them. They're looking at the arms like, what is this? Like, what's going on here? But Seth brings up a good point because I don't know with the comment that he made, he did say that when Amanda is looking at the villains that are terminated, he is not. I don't remember saying this, but if Seth saw this, that's a good point. He's not terminated in that list of characters that have been terminated. So,
but
maybe we will see him again. I don't know how to use them, but maybe we will see him again.
Just for memes. So just use him as a meme.
Yeah. Him slapping everybody around with the arms. It was so freaking great. You could just tell they're just like, "What are you doing? Stop!" Like they just throw it somewhere else. Now here we go. The guy that we didn't expect much from, and I can't really say the guy's last name, but Polka Dot Man. I want to let somebody take the role on this one. What did you guys think about how they handled the Polka Dot Man?
Go ahead, Matthew. I'll follow up. I have thoughts on it, but I'll follow up after you.
So I really love that actor, man. Like I've seen him in. I think
been a lot of stuff.
He has a record for like the most comic book appearances and movies.
Yeah, he was in The Dark Knight as a henchman. He played another Joker henchman in Gotham. I know that's.
Say he was in Gotham too. Yeah.
He's all over. He was in The Flash as Abracadabra. He had a recurring role as Abracadabra, which is a pretty interesting and big villain for The Flash. He was in MacGyver. He was in Ant-Man. Let's not forget he was in Ant-Man as the Russian computer guy. So he has a lot of roles, and I really think it's cool. But what I love that he brought to Polka Dot Man was I think he was also one of those foundational characters in terms of like grounded characters. Like, okay, I was kind of experimented on. I have a horrible, messed up childhood, like pretty much everybody else here. But some of us found a way to deal with it. He has not found a way to deal with his his trauma. He still sees his mother everywhere.
Which is hilarious.
Which is hilarious. It's both sad and hilarious.
Right.
Yeah,
It's devastatingly funny. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, he brought a lot of heart, I think, because at his core, he's a really good guy. Like, he's a really good dude with a good heart. And he, like he said, he doesn't like killing people and he doesn't enjoy it. And shout out to my man, Milton. All right. The star of the show.
Rest in peace, Milton.
Rest in peace, Milton.
R.I.P.,
That's
buddy.
my boy. You know, he was the only one that noticed Milton. Like, the fact that he cared about someone, I guess, quote unquote, so insignificant to the team, you know, shows how much he cares about people. And I hated that what they did to him in the end. I still have hope that maybe he's not dead and they pull off some movie magic and he's like, oh, well, he actually can't die. He just turns into slushy polka dots or something crap like that. I don't know. Like, they can retcon that any way they want. But
well, but did we really get to a point to where he didn't want to die? Because like he literally says he wants to die in the movie. Like I don't think I recall him coming back from that. You know, like they literally used his trauma as his final battle. You know, like that's hey, look. It's your mom, you know, like, and then you see his mom up there.
I do think he came back from it though, and with the fact that he says he goes from hating his life and wanting to die to saying I'm a mother hero, you know, I'm a superhero. Like, he was, he was.
You're right. You're right.
He was happy to be a superhero.
I agree with that. I feel like that was his turning point, albeit before he got squashed, if he did get squashed. But that was his turning point because everything before then had just been downhill for him, but he's done this amazing thing, right? And he's just really basking in that. So I do think that he had a turning point, and I also think that even though they kind of lamed him out with it being polka dots, but his ability is a pretty cool ability. And had it been something outside of polka dots, I think people would be like, "Oh, respect!" Like that's a pretty cool ability. But polka dots, you know.
Shoot, I respect the polka dots, man.
You respect the polka dots?
After seeing that, I never look at polka dots the same way again.
Now, I don't know, but is that part of his origins in the comics, or is the comics lay that character out differently?
That one I have no clue on.
Okay, because I was very curious about that. Like, if that was an actual storyline, like him being, you know, a test baby at, you know, Star Labs, you know, because that kind of changed immediately what I thought of this character. Because, you know, obviously he shoots polka dots at people. How are you going to ground this, you know, power? And they kind of did a good job, and also tying in Star Labs, you know, into the continuity of this movie with the other films. But yeah, he did great. I liked, like you said, the way he paid attention to Milton, which is a fantastic scene, by the way. When everyone doesn't remember Milton, I felt so bad for the guy. Oh, then later she thinks Bloodsport's name is Milton.
Yeah,
she calls him Milton. We had like a 2-hour conversation about how your name's Milton.
Yes, we did. No, we did. Yes, we did.
Yeah,
that also goes to show how crazy Harley is too. Like what you guys were saying earlier, to show how crazy she is. In her head, they straight up had a 2-hour conversation about him being Milton.
Yeah,
and she believes that.
Yeah,
and kind of the last character. Now we kind of talked about this, Al, before Matthew came on, but the person, I don't even know if it's worth even mentioning, but because I'm so disappointed by it. But the Thinker, Matthew, what do you think about the Thinker in this film?
So I mean, I kind of said a little bit of my opinions in our private chat before we did this, but I mean. Okay, so the only other live-action version of the Thinker I saw was actually in The Flash. He was a main villain for The Flash in season 5, I believe, and he was, up until what they did with him at the end, one of my favorite villains on the show. The way how he always outsmarted Barry, the way how he was 15 steps ahead, 30 steps ahead. So, seeing and reading him in the comic books and seeing some, that one live-action representation of the Thinker, it was actually refreshing to me to see him meme the mess out of him, like actually do his comic book look, having all those things sticking out of his head, and like him wearing like jumper, like what was another jumper, wearing like the tracksuit and everything, like just him just chilling on Court of Maltese I personally enjoyed the nonsense of it all. I'm like, okay, I mean, from the time he walked in and he's like, "Oh, you killed my man." What I knew at that point that, no, matter of fact, when he was walking in with the tracksuit, that's when I knew that I couldn't take him seriously in this film, and that they weren't going to use anything from his brain, or he wasn't going to do any brainy stuff at all. At that point, I came to that conclusion, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah, like I was telling Al earlier, and again, what we discussed in the private conversation is that I just kept waiting for him to outthink the team. I kept waiting for him to do something, and it just never happened. When he died, I was just like, okay, there's goodbye, random scientist number one. Like that's all he was. So, well, that's the cast and characters of this movie, man. Again, overall, I enjoyed this movie, and I'm not gonna lie, I'll probably watch it 2 more times this week because I love diving into movies like that. But I I'm not sure like like I don't know where they're going to go with this. Like, do you think Suicide Squad is just going to be its own thing, or are we going to see them try to branch off into another attempt of a Birds of Prey, or bring Peacemaker into a Superman movie or something like this? Do you think they're going to try to do that, or do you think Warner Brothers is going to try to keep these solo films the way like finite in their own little world, but somehow loosely connected to the rest?
I got an opinion on that. So I said this in the live stream I was in yesterday. I think DC right now someone said this that in oh my god, I'm fumbling. Someone said this yesterday that DC is focusing mainly right now on solo projects and kind of just allowing directors to do their thing. And I personally think it's better that the only type of continuity that we should be focusing on is for sequels to the previous films. So if Shazam 2 doesn't connect anything to Shazam 1, then that's a problem. Or if they do happen to make a Joker 2, which I don't think they will, but if they do, it needs to continue from that world. And Aquaman 2 and the sequel to maybe Birds of Prey, if they do it, I feel it's advantageous for them to focus on just keeping their sequels for their individual characters in check first before they try to branch out and do this whole connected universe thing. I don't think that's necessary right now. It didn't work the first time, and they need to do what they're doing now, which is to develop their characters, give them a chance to be their own thing and have their own moments, and then maybe later on we can try that again and try to connect everybody and see if it can work out that way, especially after the Flash movie.
So basically what you're saying is bring everybody in with their own stories, and then when it collects, maybe in the future, it's going to be something for us to grab a hold to better because we'll know each individual character from their solo movies, kind of like what the MCU did, pretty much.
Yes, and they'll have more to work with because now we have in-depth storylines. Because in Aquaman 2, they're going to hopefully expand on what we've seen in the first thing. We'll see more of Atlantis. We'll see more of what it means to be a king. Arthur's challenges now hopefully into what it is to be a king, to be the leader of this new thing that he's been resenting for so long. So when we see him actually become the character he's supposed to be, and we see, in Shazam, they become what they're supposed to be, then when it's time to do maybe a Justice League 2 or some other type of or an Injustice movie or something, we're ready.
Yeah. I agree with that. That's kind of an unfortunate result of how the whole, Zack Snyder finite concept that got exploded and almost forced into a universe setting to compare with or to compete with Marvel. I think that's where all this big debacle happened, because that he had just a regular plan. Hey, this is my finite universe, and they're like, yeah, but we really want an actual cinematic universe, and then they tried to force it into there, and it just didn't. It just all kind of fell apart. So now they're sweeping up their broken pieces and they're gluing them back together. And I think you're right. I think they're going about it in the right direction by just giving us these little one-offs, but loosely connecting, the other movies. But I get what you're saying. Like the jokes in this movie kind of spin off, the first movie a little bit. I get that. Al, what do you think, buddy?
No, I agree. I think almost have nothing else to share outside of parroting what Matthew just said. I think like that is exactly what they should do. Just kind of build the other characters. It gives them more to work with. It much like the MCU, it helps us to feel connected to the characters through their own storylines or individual story arcs. And it would be really cool, like if once they did that, and then they do start building bigger movies, bringing all these folks together, we know we're just so much more connected. We know Aquaman's hang up. We know so and so's life problems and all that kind of good stuff. So really getting us engaged in those characters and then trying to build something on a larger scale, I think is the formula that they should follow if they want to be successful. I have always said that even though I'm a much more of a Marvel guy, but one thing that DC has, and I don't even see it changing for the foreseeable future, is they still have the most iconic superheroes in all of comics.
Yeah.
And you can always tell stories about them. They will always have that in their pocket. I don't care what Marvel does. That's one thing that I believe that DC will always have. So,
and I've always enjoyed reading DC like somewhere down here, all the way that whole bottom shelf down there is all DC Rebirth comic books. I have actually very little physical Marvel comic books. I have most of it digital. But for physical volumes, I have more DC than I do Marvel, and just because I think DC has better comic books than Marvel. And that's a very trigger statement for some people. But I mean, I gotta say it. I mean, I think Marvel has great storylines and they have good arcs with certain characters like Black Panther and stuff like that. Those arcs are great. But when it comes to like me really getting into Batman and understanding Batman or understanding a certain character, maybe Red Hood or Red Robin or Titans or anyone, I can go in and I can really get to understand them. And it has a lot of heart and a lot of grittiness and realism to it. And I just love DC Comics a lot more than Marvel. But Marvel movies over DC movies.
So kind of going back to how Warner Brothers is handling their cinematic worlds right now, what is your opinion on doing the standalones? Like we're gonna have the Batman coming out with directed by Matt Reeves, and then we're also gonna have the Flash. It's gonna bring back the Ben Affleck and Michael Keaton. Like, do you think bringing in this solo Batman standalone movie is problematic, or do you think it's actually going to work to kind of wash the palette from this potential cinematic universe that's building on its own?
Crisis on Infinite Earths, man. Let it be a multiverse thing. I think with these movies, we should just chill with it and just let it rock and let it be its own thing and just enjoy it.
Yeah, I agree.
Enjoy a good movie. Hope it's good. Matt Reeves is going to do great.
I hope so.
I do think though that Matthew's right. It kind of has to be like a Crisis on Infinite Earth type thing. And the only reason I say that is because you've had, especially with Batman's character, you've had so much go on with all the different Batmans, the iterations of them, Bale and all that stuff. But even the tone, like Frank Miller's tone of Batman is something that you have to well respect. So you can't, I don't think anyway, I feel like DC fans or comic book fans, especially of Batman, you have to respect the Frank Miller's version of Batman that we've gotten. So you can't just reset that and say, oh, we're going with a newer version of Batman and we're going to kind of sweep Frank's under. Because really, in my opinion, I don't know, it'd be interesting to know what both you guys think about that. But in my opinion, in terms of Batman, how we have him today, Frank Miller has really put him on the map in terms of how he's written or kind of revamped the Dark Knight character. So, and he's done that with like a lot of different characters, Daredevil, and a lot of different characters. But so I think you have to be careful when you bring in different iterations of really popular characters, not to disrespect the characters that came before it. So I do think, Matthew, you're exactly right. It has to be kind of like a Crisis on Infinite Earth where we have multiple universes where we can keep folks around. But I also agree with you too. Like until we get to a place where we can really have a successful DCEU, to just enjoy what we have in front of us, the stories that were being brought, and then just slowly work our way into something bigger. Even though I do think the execs at I can't think. I was about to say DC, but not DC. Who am I
Warner
thinking
Brothers.
Yeah.
Warner Brothers have to be patient enough to allow that to happen, and they do have to have a unified game plan, and not meddle so much. And from what I understand, that was probably one of the successes for most people that really love the Suicide Squad. I think Gunn had kind of, from what I believe, free run about how he was going to do it. No one was telling him what he could or couldn't do. I think that's the case anyway.
And Walter Hamada, the president of DC, I don't know if you guys discussed this. He did say that they are planning to have James Gunn return for more projects in the future.
Yeah, I did read once. This is like when he was offered Suicide Squad, that he was actually offered Man of Steel 2 as well. You know, they're like, hey, we have both of these projects on the table. Which one would you like? And he chose Suicide Squad.
I'm glad he did.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting take to see James Gunn do a Man of Steel. Like, I don't know, he's good in this, collective type of adventure thing, but yeah, I think Warner Brothers is finally figuring out, okay, let's not meddle so much, and hopefully they stick to that, because they do have a little deep history of doing this.
One thing I want to bring up too, to add to that, Stevie, is that we can't forget Flashpoint. This Flash movie, is pretty much everyone's thinking this is going to be their excuse to retcon everything and to start over.
Oh,
because Flashpoint, if y'all are familiar with the Flashpoint storylines in the comic books, that event changed a lot of things in the comic books. So I believe there's going to be a perfect opportunity for them to be like, okay, time to reset. This is the only way that we can do this.
Yeah, and that's been the theory ever since, the whole Justice League thing happened, is that Flashpoint was going to retcon the whole situation. Be like, okay, now we start. But I'll tell you this, whatever happens with this movie, there's one thing we all want. We all want it. We want to see Bruce Wayne read that letter from Thomas Wayne. You know what I mean? That's what I want from this movie. I want to see that happen, and I hope it does. And maybe we can even get what's his name, who played Thomas Wayne in BVS. Maybe we can get him to
Jeffrey D. Morgan.
Yes,
that would be absolutely insane.
He's really good, man.
How crazy would it be to see him in that bat suit? With the red emblem. Dude,
he has the height and everything. The height, the build, all of that.
Dude, I would love just a little glimpse of him, and just that letter that he gets at the end of the Flashpoint story. I would love to see that.
You know what I would love to see? I don't know when we would get to it, because I feel like we need a lot of character development. But I would love to see a live action of Justice League Dark. That is I would love to see a live action. Man, that would be good.
Weren't they? Wasn't that on the table for a while? Didn't they have a director even for it?
That's what I heard of, but
I thought it was like maybe I'm thinking of a different movie, but I think it was Justice League Dark, where they had a female director directing it. Not Thanos, Jesus Christ. Darkseid was supposed to be in it, and
you're not talking about New Gods, right?
Maybe that's what I am.
Ava DuVernay.
That's what I was thinking of.
Yeah,
okay.
that got canceled, and she said they worked on it, and they were writing scripts and stuff, and they never picked it up.
Well, my whole thing. I don't. My concern outside of some of the other stuff that Ava did that was along those lines that I didn't think.
Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah. I just think. And I don't know, to be fair, but I think if you're going to do something like New Gods, you really have to have an appreciation for that story and those characters. Like, that's not one of those things where, I read it over the summer. Like, you really need to really have a lot of respect and appreciation for those characters as a director. And I feel like if you don't, it's going to show.
Mm-hmm.
So,
like Eternals, you gotta do the similar investment in time and care into the characters like that.
Right.
Very unique.
You do. It's funny that this kind of brings us off, but it's interesting because at first I was mad at Emily Blunt when she was like, I don't want to be Sue Storm. I don't even really like those movies. I don't really find them interesting. I was like, well, forget you, Emily, because we don't want you anyway. But then I thought, you know what? No, I actually respect that. And if Emily doesn't want to do it because she's not that interested in the character, then she shouldn't. Like you should want someone that really wants to do it. So.
Well, I agree. I see. Now you guys are out of my realm a little bit. I say I don't know anything about the Eternals, New Gods, any of that stuff. I do know about Fantastic Four, and we've gone down that rabbit hole with the
a lot
with the Loki stuff.
Loki.
So, all right, gentlemen, I'm gonna go ahead and cut this short, or not short, but I was telling Al earlier that I didn't want to go for too much longer than an hour. But just real quick, I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much, Matthew. Thank you so much, Al. Is there any last little tidbits you want to say, or just let people know where you're at, where they can find you when they rewatch this video?
Matthew?
Guys, don't look too much into things. Have fun sometimes. Don't be too serious. Enjoy the ride. And if you didn't like it, it's okay. And if you did like it, that's also okay. So just keep that in mind and just enjoy life, man. Just enjoy every single day. And you guys can find me on YouTube right here, Matthew B. Haynes, name right there, for all sorts of movie and comic book related content.
All right. Well, I would echo the same sentiments as Matthew. At the end of the day, movies are about escape and about fun. No matter what folks say about them, no matter how much I rant and rave about hating the movie, it really is about you getting out there and having fun. And it's all about the discussion, I think, for most of us here, definitely for myself as well. For all of you all who are new here, it is Dark Side Reviews on YouTube. Normally, you see a very different background. I am in the midst of moving. So that's what you see, but you can find me on Dark Side Reviews on YouTube. Looking forward to a lot of stuff coming out. I think the What If series, you guys, is this week. Am I right? Tomorrow. Okay.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Tomorrow morning.
Oh boy.
So What If drops tomorrow. So make sure that you connect with us. I'm sure we'll all be covering that, and a lot of good stuff coming. So thank you guys for hanging out. It was a lot of fun. Thanks, Stevie. Thanks, Matthew, as well.
Yes. Thank you guys. And the links to both these gentlemen's YouTube channels is in the description below. And all right, I'm just going to end this by saying, rest in peace, Milton.
Yes.
Yes.